It is now 10 o'clock or past, if members would, find their chair. No. Thank you, Rob. I'll call the meeting to order this morning. I'm going to ask after we sing the anthem, if people would remain on their feet, we'll have a moment of silence. Okay, so if everyone wants to rise and we'll sing "O Canada."
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them. Thank you, Miigwech. Madam Clerk, would you do the roll call, please?
Councillor Mackey. Councillor McKay. Councillor Carlton. Councillor Pringle. Councillor Pringle is absent. Councillor McQueen.
Present.
Councillor Nielsen. Councillor Patterson. Councillor Dickert.
Present.
Councillor Kentner. Councillor Keaveney. Councillor Body.
Present.
Councillor Gregg. Warden Milne.
Present.
Councillor Dobreen. Councillor Matrosovs. Councillor Boardingall.
Present.
Councillor Eccles. Councillor Hutchinson.
Present.
We have all members in attendance today, and Councillor Pringle will be joining us later this morning.
Thank you, Chair. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, Six Nations of the Grand River, Haudenosaunee, Wendat, Wyandot, Wyandotte peoples on whose traditional territories we gather, whose ancestors signed treaties with our ancestors. We recognize also the Métis and Inuit whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples. Is there any declaration of interest related to any matter in today's agenda? Not seeing any. If one should arise during the course of the meeting, feel free to declare it at that time. Adoption of the minutes. We have special committee of the whole meeting minutes dated October 24th. Would someone care to move those minutes, please? Councillor Keaveney and Councillor Eccles. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. The second are the County Council and Committee of the Whole meeting minutes dated October 26th. Would someone care to move those minutes, please? Counselor Bordignon, seconded by Counselor Matrosovs. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Bylaws. We have bylaw 5162-23. Someone care to move that? Counselor Nielsen, Counselor McKay. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Yep, the next bylaw is 5163-23. Someone care to move that, please? Counselor Hutchison and Counselor McQueen. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. News and celebrations. Does anybody have anything they wish to apprise us of? Counselor Keaveney, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden, and good morning, everyone. I just wanted to announce that on Saturday morning, November the 11th, of course, Meaford will be hosting its annual Remembrance Day service at our cenotaph. And we're very pleased this year that we will have a significant presence back from our 4th Canadian Division Training Center, which has been missing for the last few years during COVID. And there will also be the Grace Simcoe pipe band joining us in Meaford. And everyone is invited afterwards into Meaford Hall for some hot beverages. And we have an amazing display in our galleries in the hall. Thank you to the great staff at our museum. And it acknowledges many of the veterans and their sacrifices, all of the men and women, not all, but many of the men and women who served from Meaford. So everyone is welcome to join us on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Counselor Greg.
Thank you. And through you, Warden, just like to note for council this morning, I attended ribbon cutting at the Bright Shores Owen Sound Hospital on the new MRI. And speaking there was Ann Ford, CEO, Colin Belluth, MRI director, and Amy McKinnon of the foundation speaking to the benefits that the new MRI running in parallel with the machine placed in 2020 beside it places or contributes for the entire region. Grey Bruce all benefiting wonderfully from this new machine. And it's a machine that has placed Owen Sound at the forefront of leading technology for a hospital of its size in Canada. So nationally, this is a tremendous amount of technology at the hands of specialists in terms of treating people's health in our community. So nice to be able to attend on Mayor Body's behalf, who's a little under the weather yet.
Thank you, Scott. Anyone else? Counselor Matrosovs.
Thank you. Through you, the warden, and I realize that all of us have our ways in which we can do our remembrance this week at various different points in our communities. But I did want to add on to that in addition to the one that we do at 11 o'clock when you're all doing yours, we do have one at 1 o'clock, which is a tradition for us to do up at the Ravenna Hall. So it's right in the center of the Town Blue Mountains. So if by chance there are members of the community that are unable to, perhaps they're working during the morning and they're not allowed to attend an 11 o'clock service, we do always provide that one, and we meet at the cenotaph, which is right beside the Ravenna Hall. 1 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Anyone else? Okay. Oh, Counselor Eccles.
Thank you. And it was a pleasure just to say congratulations to Southgate. Very unique that they host their Remembrance Day celebration on the Sunday before Remembrance Day. And I was able to attend that laying of the wreaths there. Interesting from a personal standpoint, the warden and myself. The warden has a great uncle that was killed in the First World War and was recognized on the cenotaph there. And I had a great uncle that was also recognized on that. So very good to attend that, basically to start the Remembrance Day celebrations that we should remember. We do remember once a day, but we should remember it every day for 365. So, thank you for Southgate for putting that on.
Yeah, there's a bit of history why the Holstein one is prior to the actual Remembrance Day, but we won't go through that right now. But thank you to Councillor Eccles for attending that ceremony, and Deputy Mayor DeBreen was there as well, of course. Anyone else? Okay, not seeing any others. I need a motion to adjourn. Councillor Matrosovs, Councillor DeBreen, all in favor? That is carried. We'll just take a moment to change over to our committee of the whole. Thank you, Rob. I'll bring this meeting to order. Is there any declaration of interest related to any item on this agenda? Not seeing any. There's no business arising, or I don't see any, no. We have no delegations. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. Would anyone like any of those items removed from the consent agenda? Not seeing any. I would take a motion to adopt the consent agenda. Councillor Nielsen and Councillor Patterson, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Items for direction and discussion. The first is Grey County comments regarding Bill 134, the Affordable Homes and Good Jobs Act. Someone care to move that, please? Councillor Kentner and Councillor Nielsen. And I believe Randy's going to present this report. So welcome, Randy.
Good morning, everyone. So in 2022, the province had made some changes to the Development Charges Act through what was called Bill 23, known as the More Homes Built Faster Act. Through these changes, developments that were termed as affordable residential units, as well as attainable residential units, would be exempt from municipal development charges. So this includes development charges, community benefit charges, as well as parkland dedication requirements. However, at that time, the terms affordable and attainable were not defined as part of Bill 23. On September 28th of this year, the Ontario government introduced Bill 134, known as the Affordable Homes and Good Jobs Act. They posted the proposed amendments through the Ontario Registry and asked for comments by October 28th of this year. Given the time constraints, staff were able to provide comments on Bill 134, which are attached to the staff report. And these comments were put forward as a continuation of the comments that were put forward as part of the Bill 23 comments and concerns that Grey County had, which council had endorsed back on December 8th. The main change that Bill 134 proposes is to define the term affordable residential unit under the Development Charges Act. And essentially, the proposed definition would align with the definition that's in the provincial policy statement. So what this means is that rental units or rent that is no greater than the lesser of 30% of the annual household income at the 60th percentile in the applicable local municipality, or the average market rent as set out by Ministry of Municipal Affairs in the Affordable Residential Units Bulletin. For ownership units, the affordable residential unit definition would be the sale price being no greater than the lesser of these two items. First being the annual accommodation cost is less than 30% of the household income at the 60th percentile in the applicable local municipality, or 90% of the average purchase price as set out by the ministry in the Affordable Residential Units Bulletin. So staff would say that it's positive to see the proposed definition aligning with the provincial policy statement when it comes to the affordable definition, because this provides consistency between provincial legislation and provincial policy. However, the Affordable Residential Unit Bulletin is currently not available, and therefore it's difficult to assess the potential impact the proposed definitions could have when it comes to development charge exemptions. To give you a sense of what it could be, so based on 2022 data, the affordable house price based on 30% of the annual household income at the 60th percentile throughout Grey County would be approximately $357,000 for a home sale. And the affordable rent would be $1,460. So that would be based on 2022 data, what we could see in that affordable residential unit bulletin once it's released by the province. But until that time, we won't know, and we won't know then what the impacts would be on our exemptions for DCs. There's also no indication of how frequently the bulletin will be updated. And we also don't know what the geographic scale will be for that bulletin. The proposed definition includes wording to suggest that it might be at the local municipal scale, which staff would support. As we know, there's considerable variation of the average household incomes across local municipalities. And therefore, there would be significant variability in what would be considered affordable across local municipalities. So having at the local municipal scale will help address some of that variability. Having rental data also at the local municipal scale will be very beneficial, because right now we only have some rental data for municipalities with populations of 10,000 people or greater. And we get that through CMHC. So if we had some better data at the local municipal scale for across the province and across Grey County, this would be very beneficial for everyone. In terms of the frequency of the bulletin, staff recommended that the bulletin be updated at least on a quarterly or semi-annual basis, as the affordable thresholds can change quite frequently. And we've seen that over the past few years, where the prices have changed quite significantly in a very short period of time. Proposed Bill 134 makes no clarification on the definition of attainable. So though it defines affordable, there's no definition for attainable housing. And based on the changes in Bill 23, attainable housing units would also be exempt from development charges. And as noted through the county's comments on Bill 23, this could have a significant impact on development charges that are collected by municipalities. These, of course, these funds are used to support growth-related capital projects, such as road improvements and infrastructure improvements. So without these funds, what it means is that those projects could be delayed, or there may not be sufficient funds for those projects to proceed. That then has an impact where we may not be able to see the housing any new housing come online as quickly as we'd want, which, as we noted previously in the comments, would be actually going the opposite direction where the province wants to go. We've also noted, as part of the previous comments on Bill 23, the county remains concerned about the administrative burden applied to municipalities based on the proposed DC exemptions. So for development that meets that affordable and attainable thresholds, local municipalities are required to enter into an agreement between the municipality and the person that would be exempt from paying a development charge. And that affordable unit would need to remain affordable for a period of 25 years in order to be exempt from DCs. So this requires not only the municipalities to administer these agreements, to register them on title, but to also continually monitor and ensure that those units remain at affordable and attainable thresholds throughout that 25-year period. So if the unit no longer meets those thresholds, then the municipalities would be able to recover the exempt DCs, but this again would likely require additional staff resources to continuously administer, monitor, and enforce those agreements. In addition to increased municipal workloads to manage the agreements, the use also complicates purchase and sale transactions. And we've seen that in the past with one project and even a recent project where financing through associated with CMHC funding has had challenges in terms of having these agreements and these quote outstanding development charges on the books. Staff noted that it might be simpler to create a specific type of lien or similar interest that is consistent throughout the province. And that way we're having a same playing field throughout the province. This could be then registered on title and with conditions applicable to the development charges that were exempted. So given the impacts of the DC revenue loss from the exemptions, as well as the administrative burden, as we've mentioned, It was suggested that if the province still wants to move forward with DC exemptions, then it's recommended that they focus on affordable rental housing exemptions only. So to look at potentially removing the exemptions as it relates to affordable ownership units, as well as the attainable units. This would reduce the potential impact to municipalities caused by DC exemptions, but also still incentivizing those affordable rental housing units, which we all know is desperately needed throughout Grey County and the province. So we'll continue to monitor these changes to the Development Charges Act, and we'll of course work in collaboration with local municipalities on ways we can address these proposed changes, and we will keep council up to date on the status of the impact, and happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Randy. Are there any questions? Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Warden. Randy, just a question for you. The objective here is to incentivize developers to build affordable and rental attainable housing. When we talk about having this administration and on title, do you think that kind of counterintuitive to the encouragement? Like it's almost a deterrent to say you're gonna have to enter into an agreement. There's some challenges with potential land sales. There's gonna be challenges with administrative. From our perspective as the county, we'll obviously have to monitor it, but then there must be some kind of a reporting mechanism from the developer to report to us if there's changes. So do you think that this kind of is counterintuitive, that aspect of it, to make it more of a deterrent to the developer?
Yeah, and I think the intent is to try to encourage more affordable and attainable housing, no doubt. Like I said, it has the unintended impact of impacting our development charge revenue in terms of which supports some of those future new developments as well. But I think you're correct in terms of the burden that we've seen in terms of attaching these agreements and registering those title and the transactions that may follow suit. Some lenders, institutions for sure have concerns with some of that. So it could be seen as something that it's not favorable amongst at least the lender community. In terms of developer community, every little bit helps, right? And we know that. So some of the recent proposed exemptions from the GST and the provincial tax on rental housing, I think is welcome, because there's a lot of upfront costs that developers are taking on when they're developing those residential units, and they're not seeing a return on investment for quite some time. So anything to help reduce some of those costs upfront, I think is seen as something that's positive that will help hopefully incentivize that. So that's why we're recommending if the province wants to focus on these exemptions, focus it more on the affordable rental housing versus some of the other ones, because we think it could be more of a administrative burden and a deterrent based on a revenue perspective as well as a lender perspective.
Anyone else? Okay, not seeing any further questions. Thank you, Randy. Good report. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. The next report is a recommendation regarding report OPA 18. Somebody care to move that, please? Councillor Carlton, Councillor Mackey, and Stephanie, please. Yeah, I guess we need the report first, don't we? So welcome. Good morning.
Good morning, County Council. So here before us today, we have County Official Plan Amendment number 18. It's in the Township of Southgate on Part Lot 27, Concession 16. The application and site location. This is an image of where the property is located. You can see the back west side of the property is currently being tilled for farming purposes. The front portion of the property currently has a barn on site, and the remainder is being used just as grassed. So the applications before us today is a county official plan amendment. Following a decision recommendation on this application, it would proceed to the township for consideration for an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment and site plan The lot area is 10 hectares in size. So the proposal before us is to consider an on-farm diversified use. So it include a shop, power room, skid steer room, outdoor storage area, and gravel yard on an undersized property being 10 hectares in area. There's a county official plan amendment for agricultural and hazard lands, and it would have the effect of amending the subject lands to agricultural site specific to and hazard lands. The proposed location of the shop, as indicated on the site map here, would be located outside of the hazard lands. And as noted, the property has 8 hectares of tillable lands and no agricultural land would be removed from production. In total, the proposed shop would comprise of 2% of the total area of the subject lands, which is the same maximum land area threshold applied to all other OFDU proposals on larger lots. So here we have the proposed official plan designation. It would be agricultural, site-specific, and hazard lands. Throughout the circulation process, there were no comments received from members of the public, and agencies had no objection. Supporting materials provided: plan justification report, concept plan, and an agricultural impact assessment. Just wanted to give a bit of an overview of the agricultural impact assessment. So for agricultural impact assessment was completed for the subject proposal. These assessments are typically done to understand and outline how a new proposal in the agricultural area would affect current and future agricultural operations and recommend ways to either avoid or, if not possible, minimize and mitigate adverse impacts. So in this case, a review of the subject lands took place going back roughly 15 years ago. So the lands have remained unchanged, relatively unchanged, sorry, except for the construction of a barn. And the barn had the effect of reducing the agricultural lands available for protection from 8.5 hectares to 8 hectares in total. The subject land is located within a predominantly agricultural area, meaning the land surrounding are predominantly used for agricultural purposes. There are 2 properties in proximity that have similar operations, small-scale industrial uses, and this use would be compatible and like to those surrounding uses. MDS requirements were met, meaning the effect of the proposed industrial use would not limit existing farm operations from continuing as status quo. As a note, the Township of Southgate does not require MDS to be calculated for OFDUs. This was simply completed by the consultant to understand the impacts of the proposed development. And this application would not influence or have the effect of permitting any new undersized agricultural lots in the Township of Southgate. This lot was undersized prior to the most recent zoning bylaw provisions being instated. Any new lots created in the agricultural zone going forward would be required to have a minimum of 40 hectares, 100 acres in size. So staff have completed a review of the planning merit for this proposal, and just wanted to provide a bit of an overview and discussion on that. So the subject industrial use would not have the effect of removing any agricultural lands from production or limit the existing agricultural lands from continuing to be tilled by the current landowner. As per the PPS, County Official Plan, Township OP, along with the province's permitted use guidelines in primary agricultural areas, OFDUs must be compatible and not hinder surrounding agricultural areas. This has been demonstrated throughout this proposal. Through the application of OFDU policies, recognition should be granted to the notion that these uses are supporting and allowing for economic activities and strategies to support farmers of all ages. I apologize, I did indicate young farmers, but I do want to expand that to express it can support farmers of all ages. The subject lands are small, so they have currently the owner is tilling 8 hectares, and through that there would be less output yield through that operation. So they have less opportunity to make money on that 8 hectares of land, given its size. Despite the size of this property, the subject owner is currently tilling 8 hectares, and they have a coverall barn for meat goats. So they're clearly demonstrating the existing and continued interest in farming. And there are certainly undersized lots that would not be viable for OFDUs. So we could look at another 10-hectare lot in the agricultural area that would be predominantly covered in hazard lands, wetland features, and there isn't a lot of area viable for farming purposes. That would not be considered through the lens of allowing for an OFDU. So I just wanted to note that, not all undersized lots would be suitable for OFDUs. As well, the proposal would be utilizing private services, and the township may collect development charges for road improvements. And I just wanted to note that the largest threat to the county's rural character is significant residential development and non-agricultural uses, as these uses tend to be classified as sensitive receptors. So they're sensitive uses when we're considering any new development, agricultural or resource extraction operations. So they can have the effect of limiting operation expansion or growth of farm and resource extraction operations. And both of those uses, so agricultural and resource extraction, have both been classified as important and finite industries province-wide to protect. And this use is considered under the overall umbrella as an agriculturally supported use. And I just wanted to note as well that the county has an interest in prioritizing on-farm and resource uses over non-agricultural uses in the countryside. In terms of how this proposal falls, or it's related, sorry, to the OPA 11 context. I also apologize, I wasn't at work at the time when this was discussed at County Council, so I might defer to Scott for further clarification if there are questions on this matter. But through my understanding is that when the OPA 11 process was being undertaken, it was understood and communicated by County Council that the policy framework that had intended to permit OFDUs on smaller sized agricultural lots, so being 10 hectares in size, was to be removed based on the uncertainty of whether this policy could have the effect of compromising agricultural lands. It was also communicated that staff should seek additional consultation with the public to understand the merits and reasoning behind the need for this permission. An individual may still choose to proceed with an amendment to the county official plan, regardless of the discussion that took place with respect to this policy under the context of OPA 11. And staff continue to monitor official plan amendments of this nature and all official plan amendments to gauge whether policies should be updated throughout our official plan that better capture the interests of the public while also balancing planning considerations. So also considering natural environment, health and safety, access, resource protection, infrastructure needs, smart growth. I just wanted to note as well, there has been some discussion and inquiries with respect to whether or not this proposal could have the effect of setting a precedent in terms of countywide and other landowners looking to proceed with applications of this nature. I just want to reiterate that it is our responsibility when we receive these applications that we are responsible for reviewing and assessing under the planning policy framework each planning application under its standalone planning merit. So in terms of the overall recommendation here, staff are of the perspective that the proposal has demonstrated compliance and conformity with the key tests that are required to be reviewed when assessing new OFDUs. So it has recognized that minimizing the amount of land taken out of agricultural production, ensuring agriculture remains the main land use in prime agricultural areas, limits off-site impacts, so traffic change in the agricultural rural character, and ensuring compatibility with the surrounding agricultural operations. So at this time, staff are recommending approval of the subject application based on its standalone planning merits, and believe the proposal has regard for matters of the provincial interest under the Planning Act, is consistent with the PPS, and meets the goals and objectives of the county official plan. And that concludes my presentation, and be happy to take any question at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Are there any questions? Counselor Nielsen.
Thank you, Ward Milne. Stephanie, you said that the shop would be 2% of the total land usage on the property. And that complies with the objectives of on-farm diversified use. The shop size in Southgate, like the county, allows for a 750 square meter shop. Is that applying a full-size shop, or is that applying a scaled back version of a shop to still meet that 2%?
Sorry, can you repeat your question? My mind was thinking at the same time.
Most certainly. Your statement was that the shop meets the 2% guideline. Southgate allows for a 750 square meter shop. My question is it a full-size shop to the maximum of that size that meets the 2%? Or is there intention of the proponent to scale back the size of the shop to meet the 2% threshold?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Nielsen, sorry. I apologize. And yeah, so in terms of the overall size and scale of the shop, they would be looking to meet the 2% threshold. The size of the shop is 238 square meters. I would have to look at it's undersized with respect to that. But then when you factor in the overall 2% also considers the power room, skid steer room, outdoor storage, the laneway. So it's more of an extension of that. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay.
Thank you, Stephanie, for that answer. Any other questions? Councillor Eccles.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you to Stephanie. So this is an industrial use on an agricultural property, so I can understand. The question becomes, is it designated as an agricultural industrial use that it gets permission to be on here, or can it be any industrial use? Per se, it's going to make plowshares for agricultural. You know, that's agricultural. It's going to make airplane parts for Boeing. Do we have that type of industrial? Does it allow that it's got to be an agricultural industrial use or just a straight industrial use?
Thank you, Councillor Echo, for your question. When considering on-farm diversified uses, they don't have to be agriculturally specific. Like the nature of the use doesn't have to be agriculturally specific. The idea behind OFDUs was that they are to support and supplement agricultural operations, and they have to meet those tests as outlined in my presentation in terms of compatibility, limited in size, not affect or hinder surrounding agricultural areas. The industrial type operations that would be required to be agricultural in nature or agricultural adjacent would be the agricultural related uses. And so you could consider agricultural related industrial type uses through that provision. And if that was considered through that provision, it would have to be agricultural in nature in some degree, and that it's supporting the surrounding agricultural area or has agricultural components to that operation.
If I may. So that I'm clear then, somebody that's going to do that, they couldn't put an industrial buy a piece of agricultural property and put an industrial building or industry in there unless it was going to enhance the agricultural community and surrounding it. Meaning that an industrial use can't go on places, it's got to be pushed towards the urban area with municipal services. Or in this case, it's an industrial use, but it's on the farm and it's kind of agricultural, so it doesn't need that portion to be applied to it. From our economic development perspective, I'm trying to get that where that would be allowed, or is this setting a precedent?
Well, it's not quite lunchtime, but Scott, if you have some clarification, by all means, I invite you to join in.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you for your question, Councilor Eccles. Just as a bit of a history here, years ago, and some of you were on council at this time, there used to be a requirement that if you were proposing one of these uses in the agricultural designation, you did need to demonstrate that the on-farm industry, as we called it at the time, was somehow related to agriculture. So if you had somebody coming in and saying, hey, I'm manufacturing gates that farmers use, okay, or I'm manufacturing water troughs, you know, that would be okay. But in more recent memory, the province has done away with that. And as Stephanie has noted, for an on-farm diversified use and what we used to call back in 2005, a secondary use, doesn't have to be specifically related to agriculture, but does have to be serviceable with private services, so individual septic systems and wells, so you can't have a use that's creating high water or effluent demands in that regard. And also has to be limited in size and scale. And similar to Councillor Nielsen's question, the way the province has recommended limiting this size is you would have a limitation on the overall size of the entire use, including any parking, outdoor storage, laneway, anything like that, the septic system. And then you would have a separate limitation on the building itself. So the building would be a subset of that overall use. And the overall use in total can only be 2%. What's happened in the county over the years since the province introduced these updated guidelines is we have been seeing more and more on-farm industry. Some of that industry is definitely still related to agriculture. Some of it is unrelated, but regardless of whether it's related or unrelated, it is still capped in size and scale. So, you know, I'm being a little bit facetious here, but we're not looking at you know, a major auto manufacturer buying up a farm in Grey County. But where the province finally got to was, in one sense, it doesn't really matter if you're manufacturing farm gates on site or widgets on site, and the widgets being not at all related to agriculture. The impacts on farming, the impacts on land use, and the benefit to the farmer of having that diversified income is the same. So hopefully that helps clarify some of the questions here.
Okay, thank you, Scott. I have Councillor Mattersons and then Councillor DeBreen.
Thank you. Through you, the warden, actually, Director Taylor did answer some of my questions, because when I did some research on this, I looked at the OFA website, which elaborated on farm diversified uses, and there were 3 buckets, and the third one was able to coexist. So not necessarily agriculture related, but able to coexist. And so I've heard some now specific examples that Director Taylor has supported that what it means to coexist. So that is our only mechanism. With that, then the question through the chair to staff then would be, so is that the only mechanism then that we have in order to be able to define who decides, no, that's now too big, that's no longer coexisting with agriculture? It's who draws the black and white line when it gets gray in between. That was my question.
Thank you, Councillor Mattersons. So yeah, in terms of the determining the overall size and scale of these types of uses and understanding, to what extent or size could potentially put it over the limit of not being compatible or not being supportable based on, as Scott had mentioned, limited services. province has provided some general guidance in terms of a maximum threshold in terms of the size provisions for these types of uses. And through our official plan process, Recolor Gray, we did some review and locally and understanding maybe what the size provisions would be supportable based on what our previous policies had supported, and not looking to extend or open the door so broadly that it would be a big extension from what we had previously supported. So if my memory, if my memory is correct, I think the province has significant larger permissions for these types of uses, and we have through our official plan limited the size and scale quite a bit in comparison to what would be permitted as per the guidelines in the province. And I think it's just a further process that staff are looking to do going forward in terms of understanding the impact of the size that our OP has in terms of the provisions that would permit these types of uses, and whether or not that needs to be evaluated going forward. It's a changing scenario and context where understanding those impacts cannot always potentially be realized until development occurs, and then that needs to be reevaluated and assessed. So it could be an ongoing discussion going forward as well.
And if I could just add there, generally, the size that is in front of us now has been compatible with the Southgate community. I can't comment on other areas, obviously, but in Southgate, it's generally worked very well, and it's been a benefit for our community, as in my opinion. Councillor DeBreen.
Thank you, through you, and good morning, County Council. Thank you, Stephanie. You mentioned that there are 2 shops adjacent to this property, and the fear is that it becomes an industrial parkway. They do transfer product at times from farm to farm, shop to shop. The accumulative effect of that and the additional truck traffic would be dealt with at a local level more than a concern for County Council, I would imagine. And has any consideration been given to the neighboring residents who don't have on-farm diversified use or shops that would be affected by the additional traffic, the delivery trucks, the transport of goods from shop to shop? That would be a concern. And I guess my question through you to you is, has that been given any consideration, and would that be a local level at the site plan stage?
Thank you, Councillor DeBreen. So the question with respect to cumulative impact and understanding the nature of how these uses function as part of an ecosystem would be something that could be considered to conduct a review at the local level. It's important to recognize that, permission for one use has one effect, but then if there's multiple in a similar or smaller area, that would have a different effect, I guess, to residents and other others in the area. So that would be something that the local level could explore further in understanding the how that network exists today and what effects those are that we're seeing. And then in terms of understanding the effects for neighboring adjacent residential owners, in terms of the truck traffic and potential noise through site plan, there has been discussion around what type of mitigative measures could be incorporated. So there typically are requirements around tree planting. The traffic volume would be something that would be hard to mitigate in terms of it would happen. The vehicles would have to go to the property and leave the property, but potential discussions around preferred routing could be potentially discussed with the proponent to identify maybe least least impactful routes or roads that would have the ability to better support in terms of their infrastructure, these types of uses. But yeah, we don't typically get into understanding the cumulative impact of these types of uses, recognizing there also are agricultural uses in the area that have there's lots of tractor traffic and other agricultural vehicles that utilize those roadways, and we typically view these as under a similar lens as they are an agricultural proxy type use.
Thank you. And just one further question about our climate action plan and our goal to reducing greenhouse gases. These industrial shops, these on-farm diversified uses and other on-farm shops often employ generator through fossil fuel. Is there any conversation being had through the county with the community about looking at alternative uses to fossil fuel? Because now we'll have a third power generation through a generator that uses fossil fuel in that proximity.
Thank you for your question, Councillor DeBreen. And yeah, the reference to the climate change action plan, it's a really good point. And also just overall recognizing that in terms of planning and development, the most efficient way in supporting development and where we would like to typically see larger growth would be in our settlement areas for that purpose, where it does limit the need for vehicles and traffic to travel longer distances. In terms of the application of the climate change action plan, my understanding is that there is consultation with the agricultural community throughout that action plan and implementation of it. And yeah, I can definitely note it as a piece to bring back to the group internally, that it could be an area to further explore in terms of assisting or providing options and information to existing business owners in the agriculture area that could explore adjusting their energy use type.
Okay, thank you for the questions. Randy, you have something to add there, please?
Thank you for that. And just in further to what Stephanie had indicated in terms of the Green Development Standard project, that's as a tri-county partnership project between Grey County, Wellington County, Dufferin County. We'll be exploring all opportunities to look for how any new development can achieve more energy efficient development, and looking for some best practices and looking for those opportunities. So I think we're just at the beginning of that project. So I think there'll be lots of conversations that we can have with not only obviously developers, but also the agricultural community in terms of how we can look at going forward, how we can at least have these developments be more energy efficient and therefore potentially reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And there's lots of opportunities and lots of grant funds that are available to through whether it be solar projects and other things to help offset some of these impacts as well. So that's something that we can definitely we'll be exploring further as part of that project, as well as some other initiatives that are underway.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you to Stephanie. The two properties close by with the similar industrial small scale uses, do they carry the site specific designation? And did they go through this process, or were they grandfathered in? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I don't know off the top of my head, but I'd imagine they would have had to go through a similar process as this, through the policy provisions. I guess a similar process in that it would have to go through some sort of planning. It may not have had to go through an amendment necessarily if it met the conditions under the township official plan and zoning. My understanding is that these uses, though, at the township level do go through site plan. So that would have been at minimum their requirement.
Counselor DeBreen.
Through you, Warden, if I may add that the adjacent properties that would have a on-farm diversified use would generally have met the 20-hectare threshold and would probably not have required an undersized exemption.
All right, any further questions? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you, Stephanie. It's 5 to 11. You want to take a break? Yeah, all right. Let's break for 5 to 10 minutes. All right, we'll reconvene at 5 after 11. 1 minute warning. Okay, Rob, if you'd fire that up, please. Okay. Thank you, Rob. We'll bring the meeting back to order. The next item on our agenda is more discussion about budget. It's a pre-budget workshop. It's titled such as. So Mary Lou Spicer is going to come to the podium, is coming to the podium, and she will take us through what we've done, what we want to do or may do, and where we might end up. So Mary Lou, welcome. Good morning. Do we need a motion? There's no motions for this particular point just yet. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So what you have on the screen is an updated summary based on the conversation and the adjustments we made last week. So the first line, gives you the starting point where we were October 24th, where we were October 31st, and where we were November 7th. And you can see the growth changed slightly as a negative. So of course, the roll is not considered returned until mid-December. So right now, 1% equals approximately $695,300. So I won't go through them all. We had the November 3rd adjustments that we talked about. There were the line item adjustments, the removal of positions, and then the closed session supported adjustments that we talked about last Friday. So the total supported budget adjustments that were made is $1,437,600. So that was a 2.07% reduction. And so we're sitting right now after growth at $7,001,575, which is a 10.07% increase after growth. And then go to. So on pages 2 to 4 of this presentation, these are the items that we talked about last week. The addition is providing you the 2023 budget as a comparison. So I won't go through every single line. These items were for your consideration, and if there is anything that you wanted to adjust, we would make those adjustments, and that would be reflected in the budget that's going to be live on December 1st. If there are no adjustments made today, all of these line items in level 1, level 2, and level 3 adjustments will be presented in the budget that we're going to discuss on December 8th. So I didn't know, I'll take direction from council as to whether you'd like to discuss anything, whether you'd like some further information, or if you're just content to leave these as they are and move to December 8th, knowing that we'll have another follow-up conversation on November 23rd.
So to be clear, all of these items will appear, unless there's specific direction, they will appear in the draft budget that will be presented or will be documented on December 1st. Does not mean that these items will necessarily stay ultimately in the final budget, but that they will stay in the draft budget. Or if things are removed today, there will be opportunity to put them back in if council so deems in the future. So this is simply to decide what's going in or out of the draft budget to be printed on December 1st and presented to council on the 8th? No, yes, 8th. So many dates and numbers. Okay, so what is council's, and I'm sorry, I can't see the folks online. So I'll start with Councillor DeBreen.
Thank you, and through you, Warden. Thank you, Mary Lou. I mentioned that I'm not at the last meeting, that I'm not supportive of eliminating training for our staff. It is critical that we ensure that they are getting the proper information, that they're staying up to date. There's a number of items that I would like to see as a comparison, perhaps. What happens if we were, and I'm just going to go to level 1 adjustments. I've got a few. The corporate management training where we reduced by 90,000. What would happen to the budget if we just had the status quo? I think that was mentioned at our last meeting. If we kept it at 65,000, the council day catering, Councillor Matrasov's mentioned that it is important that we break bread together from time to time. And that if we were to eliminate the lunches for the senior management team, I believe we should eliminate them for all of us. And Councillor Gregg also mentioned that if we were to reduce the number of in-person meetings, would also save on mileage as well as meals. So it's getting to the dicey weather time, we might want to consider a certain number of our council meetings being held virtually. The staff recognition, the 2023 budget was 20,000, but you're looking to reduce it by minus 25,000. So I believe also in relation to training, staff recognition is important. And I see that the warden's banquet was removed. But I do believe that the warden's forum has significant value to the lower tier municipalities if we could keep that at a 2023 level, or even look for some perhaps efficiencies. It might be worthwhile. Those are my comments for that section at this time. Thank you, Warden.
Thank you. Kim, you wish to add?
Thank you. Thank you for the questions. So I'm sorry, this is perhaps unnecessarily complicated. What we provided to you is a list of potential reductions. Unless you specifically direct us to take those reductions now, we're not taking them. The budget will come back to you. We'll build the budget with everything in it unless you've specifically told us today, do not include that. And so we're going to have some more discussions as we go through this meeting about various options. There may be some of those things that you say, yes, take that out right now. We don't need to see it. We don't need to necessarily talk about it again in December. Although everything that we do will be tracked and you'll be able to reference it back if you want to. But unless you did provide direction to staff at the last meeting about some very specific things. We're going to talk about those again because we're going to go back into in camera. But that's how we laid this out, because I know it's very challenging when you're not seeing the budget in its entirety. It's difficult to kind of pick and choose things. So again, unless it's specifically noted, get it out of there. It stays in, and then we'll be able to consider it within the scope of the entire budget in December. Thanks.
That's why Kim gets the big bucks and I don't. She can explain things way better than I can. So that said, any other questions? Councillor Matrasovs and then Councillor Eccles.
Thank you. Through you, the warden. Thank you very much, CAO Wingrove. That is very helpful for us to know that the dialogue will continue to go on. What would be helpful, though, is that there are some pretty big lines in there that were really really going to need some more detail on, such as the affordable housing. As an example, the going green and gray initiatives. I really need to be able to align what programming would stop or be on pause or not get started if we slice this particular line or this particular how the human resources matches the existing programs versus new programs which we may wish to put on pause. At our hometown, we have hundreds and hundreds of pages that we review, and I'd love to do that homework. I really want to be able to understand these, so I would like to be able to see more explanation behind the lines in order to be able to say what is that and what are the impacts for our community members who might be relying on programs, and what can we peel away because it's something we haven't yet started. I'm still not clear on that, the way that it's been presented. Thank you.
Councillor Eccles. Or sorry, did someone want to respond to Councillor Matrosov's? Mary Lou?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Warden. So that information will be in the detailed budget that will be published on December 1st. For the purpose of the discussions that we were having here, we were responding to the comment that what is not mandatory that's contained within our budget. So this was just a high level, and the details will certainly be there as far as what is an impact. If I could also just go back to Councillor Dobreen's questions. When you look at the staff recognition, so the 2023 budget was $20,000. Staff has increased that to $25,000 in the 2024 budget. So if it was to be removed, that's why there's a difference. They've asked for an increase of $5,000. And as far as corporate management training, the $100,000 that's been asked for in 2024 includes $10,000 for health and safety training. So if we were asked to live within the 2023 budget of $65,000, $10,000 for health and safety, and $55,000 would be left for other corporate training.
Thank you, Mary Lou. Councillor Eccles.
A couple of points, and one of them deals with the council. Conferences have impact to go down to one. It's almost cut in half from 30,000. You're taking out $12,000. The travel and meals only goes down 7,000 from 105. I'm just kind of at a loss for that one. How is it that we cut the registrations by almost half, but the travel and whatnot only gets cut by 7,000?
For you, Mr. Warden. So if we remove the registration fees, quite often so for travel and meals, if you adjust that and you reduce it by 7, we have 105,000 because we pay obviously a number of things, including like your mileage to come here for council, council lunches, etc. So for the most part, and if most of your meals are covered in a conference, it'll be like your accommodation and your mileage, and depending on where the conferences are. So that's been staff's rough estimate. We would obviously need to know what conference it was and where it was being held and calculate that out. But that's just a preliminary estimate.
If I could, okay, that answered. I didn't realize that the travel and meals were for the all of council. I thought just by the way it's in there, impact if reduced to 1. Recognizing where a lot of funding has come from. The other one, the impact, is that the impact of the health unit from their budget already? That we see it going up 158,000?
The information we have from the health unit staff, it's my understanding that there hasn't been anything presented to the Board of Health. Preliminary estimates are that we're going up our share about $360,000. Sorry, $320,000.
And then Bruce County would have a corresponding increase as well. So there's a change in how their funding is structured. So our impact, if we funded a portion of that from Safe Restart funding, we would phase in the increase. Because that's the preliminary information we have. Obviously, the Board of Health has not passed a budget, so that's just the best estimate that staff is using at the health unit to prepare a budget.
Thank you, Mary Lou. Anyone else? Counselor Gray.
Thank you, and through you, Warden Milne. Just a couple quick questions before I do present a motion at this time, because we have to move forward with some decisions here today to help guide us in the next couple of weeks. We still can't land anywhere close to 10.07. That's after growth. We've had another great year of growth, but I don't imagine anyone in this room expects to come close to that next year. And our general operational budget is increasing at an unsustainable rate yet. Couple quick questions. The $8,000 for Warden's Forum and inaugural, the opportunity to save is 10,000. Was that because it was just an increase of $2,000 projected and then it was completely canceled, or is there something there I'm not seeing?
Through you, Mr. Warden. Correct. The budget for the Warden's Forum and inaugural was $8,000 in 2023. The recommended increase is to $10,000 in 2024. If it was eliminated completely, that would be a reduction of $10,000 to the 2024 budget.
Memberships below it, 57,000 approximate, 24,000. Are we just paying a subscription or a membership over and above a minimum standing to be part of the SCM, or what does the reduction of 24 take us down to from a standard of service, I guess?
So we have a number of memberships. So you've got AMO, FCM, off the top of my head, I can't remember them all. Great Lakes, Western Ontario Wardens Caucus, etc. So in total, that's what was in the 2023 budget for memberships was 57.4. And the estimate, if just for FCM for 2024 is 24,000.
You have more, Scott? Okay.
Thank you for that. Below that is climate change, $11,000, reduction opportunity, 12,000. I presume that there was just an ask increase of $1,000 again. Okay. So those were my key questions. Probably going to need some note taking here in terms of jotting down what I'm and capturing the motion. I do believe strongly in saving. I'm alongside Councillor Dobreen. However, I would note that council was split a year ago. There was an increase in the training allocation from 22 to 23. It wasn't unanimous, so we did have an increase. But I do believe that we have to maintain certain items such as remove long service awards. Now, I think that we need to freeze the certain budgets. So the first item will be to remove $6,300 from the long service awards so that it is frozen at the same budget as 23, if I have that right. To remove the council day catering, eliminate SMT. The reason I'm going to put that in the motion is because I think we can substitute that ultimately with the option of having 1 or 2 virtual meetings as well in the future. I'm going to ask council to inform me as to the valid reasons why we should continue forward with the alternative councillors and the budget allocation that we have each year for that, because I would challenge that in any other corporate structure. You wouldn't have a substitute at your library board. You don't have a substitute at your arena board of management. Yet we have substitutes here that may sometimes say present, and we have a budget allocation for that. So that's why I'm adding that. Corporate management training, the motion is a reduction of $25,000 to freeze it at the 23 budget. As I mentioned, was a slight increase in training over 22. The wellness budget, a reduction of $5,000 and staff recognition of $5,000. So those budgets are frozen at the 2023 levels. And I will include the other items below with one alteration, that the healthcare initiatives be 309,500, so that only $200,000 remains, which is the commitment for Bright Shores. So I think that's a difference of or a total of $156,800 in adjustments to the way it's presented in front of us. But that is my motion, that we move forward with the level of 1 adjustments to remove them from the draft budget with those alterations that I just noted, if you have those.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you, Councillor Craig, can you confirm that we've captured your proposal? So it's remove 6,300 from the long service awards, so it's frozen at the same budget as 2023. Remove council day catering, the $6,000, which eliminates the SMT portion of the catering. Corporate management training with a reduction of 25,000, so it's frozen at the 2023 rate, and a reduction of $5,000 for the staff recognition line, so it's frozen at 2023 rates. And the healthcare initiatives contribution is $309,300.
Okay.
Did you get the $5,000 for both the wellness budget and the staff recognition? Just not sure I heard that come through there. I was referring to both those line items just to freeze them at the 23 allocation. So long service awards frozen at the 23. The corporate management training frozen at the 65. Wellness budget and staff recognition below it frozen also at the 23 levels.
Okay. Just before I ask anyone else to comment, I need a seconder for that motion to go any further. Councillor Eccles. Okay. Jen, where's Jen? There's. Oh, she's online. There you go. Hi, welcome, Jen. I see your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Through you, Mr. Warden, to Councillor Gregg and council members as a whole. The reason that the long service awards fluctuate every year is that it is calculated based on years of service in that present year. So we do a calculation. So it goes up or down based on the numbers of staff that we have at 10-year, 15-year, 20-year, 25, 30, and 35. It's not the type of budget that we can freeze because it's based on years of service and the equivalent gift for that. I just wanted to make that note. Everything else makes sense. We can freeze it. We can work within the budgetary limits, but unless we change the total program, which we can do if you would like, the current way we run our policy, procedure, and staff long service gifts is based on the actual years worked and the gift equivalent to that year of service.
Thank you, Jen, for that clarification. Mary Lou, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So just to clarify, when HR provides the long service amounts, it's $15,000 in long service awards for 2024. In 2023, it was $21,300 because we had more people that were reaching milestones in 2023. So based on the current dollar value, that based on the number of years of service, the calculation is $15,000. So that doesn't, unless we change the parameters, that's what the amount is.
Thank you, Mary Lou. So Councillor Gregg, you're okay with your motion as it stands?
let me ask if my seconder would consider just altering that. I had assumed that was functioning like the other ones where there was just a step up year over year, so, but no, it's a little different. So if I could remove the alteration to the long service awards, that it remains in.
At 15,000. Okay. Everyone's clear on that? Any further discussion? Councillor DeBreen. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you, I would like clarification on the recommendation for Council Day Catering. The recommendation to just remove the $6,000, which is the equivalent for senior management team. I can't support that without removing the equivalent value for council members. I would just like clarification to Councillor Gregg. Was the intent that we could find that $6,000 through virtual participation as opposed to it being specifically senior management team lunches?
Councillor Gregg, you want to speak to that?
Yes, that is my intent. Absolutely. I see tremendous value still in having the opportunity to sit down with directors and so forth, and our colleagues at lunch. I think there's big value there. So it is something I firmly believe in, that we can find substitution in other line items, such as the opportunities that Zoom present for us right now. January and February are great opportunities. Today's agenda is a wonderful example of under the warden's leadership. When you present an agenda, today's agenda would be a fine example where at times there's a great necessity to meet in person and look someone in the eye. Today's agendas would exemplify that it could have been conducted by Zoom. So there's opportunities there, and that's what I'm looking for.
Okay, Councillor DeBreen.
So in the wording of the amendment or the motion that is before us, could we make it clear that it's not necessary? We're looking for a $6,000 reduction in that area, however that might be found, as opposed to it being specifically reducing someone's lunch.
So what I'm understanding is that there's a request to reduce the council day catering by $6,000, but it is not directed directly at SMT. Okay, good. Because I know they'll want lunch. Scott in particular always, sorry. Kim, please.
Thank you. Just with regard to the health initiatives funding, we had previously committed, I want to say, is it 0.75% to support, and just to remind everyone on council that that was meant to cover off, in part anyway, those 10% of capital initiatives that healthcare providers must contribute from their community in order to pay for capital projects, whether that's a build at a hospital or a new piece of capital equipment. So in our case, what we're discussing at this time was to preserve the $200,000 contribution to the wellness center at Bayview. What staff had also included within this particular budget envelope was the potential to take $100,000 to support the work that OSHARE and the Salvation Army have been doing on the county, for the county, on the community's behalf, really since COVID, since we entered into the SOS program. They have been providing food to people at those on-site meetings and clinics. Kevin can speak to it much better than I can. But the thinking was that those organizations have made really significant contributions over the years, and they cannot continue to do that anymore totally on their own. And that's fine. If that's council's decision, then, that'll be communicated to them. But I think that's the place that we are right now, unless there's some ability to be able to offset some of those costs. They just can't continue to support that activity from the donations that they have, which, they weren't particularly planned for. I don't think at the time they started doing it because there was just a need, and that's the way those organizations operate. I just wanted to give you that little bit of extra context there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Any other discussion? Councillor Nielsen and then Councillor Mackey. I'm presuming that you want to discuss the motion on the floor, correct? Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, I got light up. Thank you, Warren. A question just for clarity. Can staff help me understand further the wellness budget line item, just to help me understand what the item is pertaining?
Jen, there you are. Jen, sorry, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Warden, the wellness budget is a budget line that supports mental health initiatives, fitness initiatives. It gives us a little bit of money to host training throughout the year, to run events, anything corporate wide. It's run through our health and safety manager, Misha Cochran, and we have an annual wellness action plan. And then we run events throughout the year, and that amount of money supports her for running those events and training throughout the year. It's a corporate wide, so it supports all 1,150 of our staff members.
Thank you for that to staff. So then, barring more, not stopping any further discussion, I'll move an amendment to the motion that's on the floor, that we remove the freeze and wellness and change the removal of the 309,000 to the removal of 209,500.
Okay, so there's been an amendment made. I need a seconder for the amendment before we go any further. Councillor Carleton. Mary Lou, you wish to speak?
Yes, Mr. Warden. So just to clarify in the piece about the healthcare funding commitment, it refers to Bright Shores. So I'd ask that we adjust that to just say that we're adjusting the transfer to reserve for the healthcare funding initiatives by whatever dollar council selects. Because we already have the commitment to Bright Shores for 200,000 a year.
Okay. So the amendment asks that that reduction only be 209,000 as opposed to the original motion that said 309. If I got that right. And there was another amendment, there was something else to your amendment as well, correct?
To remove the wellness freeze.
Thank you. Okay, speaking to the amendment. Oh, I need a second. Correct. Sorry. Someone second that amendment. Oh, sorry. I do have a second. Boy, I'm trying. Councillor DeBreen, speaking to the amendment.
Thank you, Warden. And to the third clause, I guess I might be overanalyzing, but it says that staff be directed to adjust the proposed budget to adjust the healthcare funding commitment to 300, well, and the amendment is 209,500. Is that the reduction of 209,500, or is that adjusting it to 209,500? There's a big difference if we are aiming to only reduce it by 209,500. If I could seek clarity on that item.
I'm understanding that the amendment is to change the reduction from the 309,000, which was originally proposed, to 209,000. So it would leave the budget for that line item at 309,500. Correct? Yes. Okay. Any further discussion? Councillor Mackey.
Thanks, Mr. Warden.
that whole list, well, in principle, I agree with a lot of what Councillor Greg is trying to put forward. And some of the amendments, I think we all have different opinions on each one of those, whether it's the inaugural, the Warden's Forum, the amount that we put into wellness. Everyone's got opinions on each one of those. And I couldn't support either resolution right now because some of them I agree with, some I don't agree with. I think we need to go through each one, put a figure up there, show our hands and decide what we want in that category. Because this is not going to be an easy process if we try to jumble them all together, because we won't, I don't think we'll get agreement on that. But I think we can get agreement on, if we're going to get rid of the Warden's Forum, show of hands, yes or no. If we're going to get rid of a certain amount of dollars for wellness, yes or no. That's quicker than this process, because I don't think this will survive the way we're going about it right now. So I know, like when we all went through it the other day, we all had different views on what we should cut, what we shouldn't cut. The majority at the end of the day will decide, but I think it would be much quicker just to, do it another way than what we're trying to do right here. So I would put forth a motion that we table each one of those quickly and make a decision on them.
Well, I'm perilously close to needing the clerk here. Can we table an amendment? Okay, so what I'm hearing from the clerk is that what Councillor Mackey is suggesting is that we break the motion out and vote line by line. So, but before I can do that, right, so that's not an amendment, it's a new motion. So I'm going to ask if there's any further discussion on the amendment. Noting that regardless of the outcome of the amendment or the original motion, that if we come back to what Councillor Mackey wants to do, we're going to vote on each line individually. So with that said, is there any further discussion on the amendment? Councillor Eccles.
I certainly won't be able to support the amendment for the simple fact it goes back to a bit like or a comment from the CEO that we as Grey County and O'Share and Salvation Army have done wonderful things and whatnot. But that is income splitting, income sharing. And we as the governance that overseeing Grey County, this isn't our responsibility. We kept going into it and going into it. How can we in good governance keep these programs going up, which aren't part of the property tax dollars, what they were meant to be, where we're supposed to be going with them? And the little straws, well, the straws come to the point right now where they broke our back. I cannot support the amendment the way it is for those factors that this is not on the property tax dollars. We've got to step back and make tough decisions to get back to doing what we were doing and put great pressure on the province and the feds to do what they're supposed to be doing instead of downloading it to us and forcing us to do it continually. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nielsen, did you have your hand up?
Just a comment, Warden, to follow up from Councillor Mackey. We're looking at these items in a silo and we're going to make decisions on this. And I understand Councillor Gregg's point about concerns about the size of the budget, and I can understand and respect what Councillor Eccles is saying as well. So then have the discussion here, but let everything come back in the budget where we can see the full numbers. We're going to have a second round of debate and discussion anyways, rather than tabling certain items. I mean, I've moved an amendment because I have concerns with the original motion, but rather than trying to table and discuss these now, we're getting in depth. We can have good discussion around what items are, what they mean, what the impacts would be, but leave them in there, let them come in the draft budget, and then have a solid discussion when we can see the full picture and not one part of a picture to try to understand as best we can and hope that we are not making a mistake by removing a service or removing something from the budget that'll end up hurting more in the future, in the long run. I will respectfully say to this council, having a service and removing a service can be more infuriating to the residents than telling the residents we're going to pay for that service and what that service will cost. You can also have, in my opinion, removing a service or taking money out of a budget to try to cut taxes today or rein in taxes today will be more expensive in the future if it's decided that that wasn't the right course, that you're trying to say the service is needed more than we understood at the time. And you'll be paying double trying to get back into a service that we maybe should have been continued to provide. And I would rather see fulsome discussions when we can see the full picture than having minor discussions about a single item that we don't fully understand the impact.
Thank you. I'm not sure who had their hand up first over there. Councillor Greg, go ahead.
I'll go quickly to the amendment. The reason I moved $309,500 is I don't take it lightly. I can go onto the Canada Revenue Agency site and I can look at the revenue and income statements as they are provided and have to be published by law. So any counselor any citizen has the ability to go on and look at those financial statements that are filed annually by every registered charity in the country. So that's why I won't support the amendment to remove that this time. I don't consider it in silos. We are involved through a myriad of different programs. And as Councillor McKay, I think, said last meeting, well, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, sir. Councillor DeBreen.
I'm still unclear of the reference to Bright Shores. I can't support it as written. I'll call the question.
Sorry, I share the same concern. I don't know that we're on the same, the dollar figure. So just need clarification that the 309,300 is the contribution to healthcare or the reduction, and same for the 209,000.
So as I understand it as the chair, the original motion called for a reduction of 309,500. The amendment changes the reduction to 209,000. Sorry? Okay, we'll just call it healthcare initiatives because it depending on where the amendment and the motion go, right, okay. Okay, Mary Lou, please.
I'm wondering if it would be clearer if it said that staff be directed to adjust the transfer to the healthcare initiatives reserve to X. So currently it's 509,500. It might be easier for everyone to understand. It says that it becomes, whether you're picking the 200,000 or whatever number, rather than talking about the reduction, because then that gets, I think, more confusing.
Okay, so going at it from that direction, then the original motion called for the contribution to be 209,500. The amendment calls for the contribution to be changed to 309,500. Any further discussion on the amendment? I can't see those online. Okay, I'm going to call the question, and to be clear, I need a motion to call the question. You can't just call the motion, call the question. I need a motion though. Are you making that a motion? All right, is there a seconder to call the question? Nobody's objecting, so I'm going to call the question anyway. All those in favor of the amendment? That fails. Okay, now we're back to the original motion as unamended. Counselor Gregg.
Just for clarification, the motion was to include having staff move forward to the draft budget with all the level one adjustments, with considering the adjustments I made, just so right now as it's written on this screen, I don't think it's capturing the intent there. It's just trying to get this process started. Every counselor, I mean, Counselor Nielsen spoke to it. We have ample opportunity to go back to line by line items like Counselor Mackey also mentioned at a future date, but we just have to get some momentum and put some motion in place here to move forward to help staff bring back a draft budget, because we can't just establish we're going to do 1.5%. So I just wanted to be clear that we capture the intent. It's level one adjustments with those alterations noted.
Okay. Any further discussion, questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That fails. Okay. Anybody else want to have a run at that? So again, to be sure, if no further changes are made today, what you see in front of you will appear in the draft budget on December 1st. The draft budget will be published on December 1st. Council will have the first opportunity to debate it on December 8th. Go ahead, Councillor Eccles.
But it's not Mary Lou said this was proposed and we had to make a motion whether we wanted to have these out or in. So I'm slightly confused, Mr. Warden, from what you said. All of these will be in the reduction of what we see December 1st.
No, all of what you see here will be included in the draft budget unless direction is given today to take it out of the draft budget that will be published on December 1st. Maybe I'll ask Kim to have another run at it because nobody asked her any more questions after she talked about it.
What's been listed on the table before you are proposed reductions. So unless staff are directed to execute those reductions, we're not taking them out. Those amounts will still show up in the budget and we can make a decision on December 8th or December 15th, those two budget days, about what stays and what goes. So all we were trying to do was to get some better clarity about, there's no sense putting things in the budget that nobody wants. So if we can take them out now, we're happy to do that. If we're not ready to take them out now, at least we've had an opportunity to start thinking about them, because I don't think anybody thinks these are particularly easy decisions to take. So the more runway we have to consider the implications or you know, the scope of what's before us, maybe the better. So unless you say, take it out, it stays in. And then we can debate it in its entirety over the two budget days.
So there's what I'd like to see on clarity from what Mary Lou said, what you said. All of these reductions from 2024 in the draft budget on December 1st will be in the budget reduced from what we've seen previous. No. So then I'll put a motion forward that the draft budget on December 1st has all of these in place. Level 1, level 2, and level 3. All the reductions.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Because we're not going to do that December 1st. We don't see any of these reductions. And to Councillor Mackey's point, we've done nothing today other than say, here's some that may be. Let's see the budget with these reductions. That's my motion.
Okay, is there a seconder for that motion before Councillor Gregg? Mary Lou?
I was just going to make a comment, and I understand it's very difficult for you to make a decision when you haven't seen the complete budget. and you don't have the details behind a lot of these things. And then if you wanted to ask for a couple recommendations that would not hurt the budget that you wanted to make today in advance of going into close to discuss some other things, we could do that. And I'll look for your direction.
Counselor Matrosovs. And then I'll come to Counselor Mackey.
Thank you. Through you, the warden, now that it's on the floor. I will circle back to my original comment about asking for the details to digest, to understand. We're hearing verbal bits and pieces about what does this mean? What does that mean? How do we parse the lunches, etc. We could be doing this so much more efficiently if we had a chance to see the details in writing in advance so that we would have a chance to come educated and be able to refine these decisions after that. And I'm not just speaking for myself as a new council member here around the table, because there is quite a bit of reference in the dialogue about this is what we've done in the past. This is the tradition, which is great. This is why we're here together. It's so good to have experienced members as well as new members all around the table, but we need to have an organized discussion on that. And more so, not just for what we're doing here at the table, but for the members of the public, the members in Grey County who want the same opportunity to understand, what does this line mean? What does that, you just cut that? It's not even going to be considered? No, let's have the fulsome consideration of all of these. I couldn't support the previous two motions, but it didn't mean that I wasn't in favor of cutting some of those things. But I could not make that decision based on simple verbal bullet points that were shared on a very parsed line when I know there's really good detail that's coming to us December 1st, which is not that far away. So that is the reason why I did not support the previous ones. I do not want it interpreted that I was not interested in cutting some of those, but for example, the council lunches, we went around in circles, and really what I want to see is how much does it cost if we cut all the lunches and we all start bringing our lunch so that we can continue to meet together. And I'm really interested in what Councillor Gregg had suggested about what savings would we have if we alternated with virtual versus in person. Those are the kinds of details that I'm looking forward to, but just the way that it's been presented here, I'm not comfortable making that decision. And I'm certainly not comfortable doing that without hearing and sharing those details with my constituents. Thank you.
And just, I appreciate those comments. And I think that was the intent of putting this the way it is, so that people would see this is an opportunity here. And if you want more information about this particular item, ask us as staff, and they will provide it when we get to that point. So I appreciate that. Now, I had Councillor DeBreen. Oh, sorry, Councillor Mackey was next, and then DeBreen.
Thanks, Mr. Warden. I think the process is a little frustrating for staff and for members of council, because we all have an end goal that we want to get to. And I think, just hearing some of the comments, actually prior to council, I think there's a consensus on a number of things. Maybe not a full majority, but there's certainly consensus on some things that we can cut. I'm not sure what that process should look like, to have those discussions and be able to make those decisions. But it would be very nice for staff to be able to come back in December, knowing that, there is a majority that are willing to cut certain things out. That will take that percentage down a little bit and help us make those other tougher decisions. I don't know how much time we have today. Some of these things I think we can go down through very quickly and provide some of that direction to staff. And that's what I was hoping we could do this afternoon if we do have time. At least take a stab at it. That's why I said earlier that I think we should look at each one individually and try to at least work through the easy ones. There's some easy ones up there. There's other ones that will be tougher, but I think we can certainly do some work this afternoon if there's some willingness.
Thank you, sir. Councillor DeBreen.
Thank you, Warden. I am very much in favor of having further discussion if that goes into the afternoon, if this needs to be deferred to, after Director Taylor comes to the podium. But I suppose I would also hope to have the information laid out when it comes to us in December 1st. And I don't think that this would be, a lot of extra work, but you've shown it before. What was the 2023 budget that we approved? What is the 2024 proposed and the suggested reduction? I know that you have that coming. It's also important to some of the conversation that we've heard is how it has changed from 2022 to 2023. It may have actually gone down based on years of service but I agree that being able to do a line by line and understanding we've got a lot. It's going to be a lot of difficult decisions in order to, not impose a double-digit budget. So it's really important for me personally to understand the impact of those cuts. So I'm looking forward to the full package and further discussion, and whether that's this afternoon or on December 8th. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you for that. And I see Councillor Pringle has joined us, so welcome, Grant. Councillor Dickert, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Warden Milne. From my perspective, there's a lot of things I don't understand here as far as what these cuts do to the operations. And I look to our senior staff to give us that background information. From past experience of working with budgets, I think we need to decide what we're comfortable with, and then let staff take that away and see what they can do with it. If we're sitting at 10.02 right now or whatever it is, what is council comfortable with? Is it 6? Is it 4? Is it 8? And then let staff take that information and create the budget from there, because they'll tell us what they can and can't do with the funds we give them. So my thoughts would be that I'd rather see us come to a target and then say, senior staff, here's what you've got. What can you do? And they'll explain to us what that's going to cost and what's going to eliminate as far as services for our general public.
Thank you, Warren. Councillor Eccles, did you have your hand up? Go ahead.
And that's exactly what I'm proposing here is we put these reductions into the budget so we can actually see absolutely what it's going to do from 2023 to 2024 and be able to do that. But that's the direction, being able to put forward the document that Mary Lou wants. If we don't put anything into this, the budget's going to be the same as, from my understanding, the same as what was proposed a little while ago, that 10.07 is where we'd be at. And none of these things are in the budget. So then we've got to go through it the whole day. Do we put this in? Do we put that in on December 1st? By putting all of these into the full document, it would give Councilor Matrozoff and anybody else that wants to really drive down on the full document, and it will show us at that point in time what it is proposed to get to that 4.02, I think is where we're at. I'm still not really comfortable with 4.02, but in the economic times, that's probably where we're, I think that's maybe where we'll end up. But if we've got to put this in, and at that December 1st budget meeting, then we can actually see where it is. And on a case-by-case basis, as we'll probably go through it at that point in time, if we want to add something from staff that's saying, yeah, we've had 2 weeks to look at it, 3 weeks, this isn't right. We're not going to be able to do what we need to the community. But if we go around here for much longer, Mary Lou's, and to Kim's point, we don't know where we're going to be at. Do we put this in? Do we not? And do we have that whole, put it in, pull it all together, and then we see it as a total thing and can act on it at that point in time. Or we'll be here until tomorrow going through this. Thank you.
Kim?
Thank you. I'd just like to make a suggestion for your consideration. The level 3 adjustments that were here were things that I think in the initial discussion, staff noted really had significant impacts on the public, on future service delivery, etc. We have other things that we want to talk to you about today. I would suggest that maybe we need to hear about what those other things are before we would take the decision to enact those level 3 adjustments, just given the significance that those would have on certain organizations and services that the county provides.
Thank you, Kim. Councillor McQueen.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And just I guess first clarity on level 3 adjustments. It talks about removing funding for the gray ag services, including space for Grady Gables. Now I understand, or I thought I understood that roughly the dollar value is around 35,000 that we sort of send that way. Is the remaining amount there of the 63 or it says 69,000? Is that what the rental space would be if they weren't there? Is that can that be explained a little bit more clear, please? Because it was brought to my attention as well.
I'm seeing Mary Lou agree that you've as you've outlined it there is accurate.
So okay, just to follow up with that, Mr. Warden.
Yep, go ahead.
So 35. So basically 35 is what that rental, I guess it's like in-kind rental space would be, including. I know that program has been in place for 20 years, which serves a great for the seed money that does, and what the, as you are aware, Mr. Warden, that money goes a long way. That you know, for the agricultural side. To me, that's one thing that I think we should stay away from in that particular program. And I don't know if you want a motion to say things that we don't touch, but I would be certainly willing to put that motion forward that is one item that we leave as is. So I put that on the floor, Mr. Warden.
Okay, so I'll take that. Yeah, so this will be, I'm going to take that as an amendment to the motion that's on the floor, because the motion on the floor calls to reduce everything as outlined in this document. Your amendment proposes to leave Gray Ag Services funded as outlined in the current budget.
Exactly. Yes.
Councillor Matrosov is seconding. Any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Matrosov, you had a question.
Thank you, Warden Milne. And I am seconding it because I do support that. However, I will still continue to vote against the main motion. So I will do this parse. I will parse this and I will vote in favor of this amendment, and then I will be voting against the main motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And as Kim outlined, there is a lot more information that be shared in camera that I think will be very helpful. So I'm going to ask for a vote on the amendment, and then I'm going to ask for a vote on the original motion. Councillor Mackey, you wish to speak to the amendment?
Well, I think this process, if we're going to try and take out each one that we don't agree with, then we're going to have a whole bunch of amendments, and it goes back to what we were previously talking about. Children's Village funding's in there of 20,000, so we need to have another amendment for that. I mean, I can't support. Well, I mean, that process just doesn't make any sense to me. If we're going to have an amendment for each thing that we want to remove, that's the same as going the other way and looking at each one and making a decision on it. So again, I don't think I can't support, you know, really any of these motions because they're not getting to where we need to be.
And I will not disagree. Mary Lou.
Through you, Mr. Warden. It seems with the variety of discussion and the uncertainty of, you know, making a decision without having all the full information, it would seem maybe in everybody's best interest, aside from whatever is decided in the closed session today, that you let staff put together the budget the way it is. So with page 1, it said that we're at 10.07. the levels 1, 2, and 3 remain in. And that's all part of the December 8th and December 15th discussions. So when we get to those relevant places in the budget, such as healthcare initiatives, you would make your decision then. Same with planning about Buckthorn, whether you want to fund it from one time, et cetera. The housing supportive build, we just pay that at a one-time funding, et cetera. But maybe that would be the best way to tackle this because you haven't seen the full thing.
I agree. It's up to council, right? So I have an amendment on the floor. I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That fails. Now we're back to the original motion, and if we want to go the direction that Mary Lou and Councillor Mackey are describing, you will oppose the motion. But if you agree with all of these reductions, you will vote for the motion. Councillor Eccles.
Would I be in position to say, table this motion until after closed session?
Yep, we can do that. If we have a seconder to table this until we come out of closed session. Councillor Carlton. Rather, the clerk would rather let the language defer. Okay, all those in favor? That is carried. Yep. So I'm going to suggest not just, well, yes, okay. Motion to go in closed session, seconded by Councillor DeBreen. Okay. I'm going to suggest that the motion to go into closed session be withdrawn for now because we have some other business to deal with. Okay? All right, that is agreed. Okay, so thank you, Mary Lou, for now. We'll see you again, I'm sure. Where the heck did it go to? Oh, Stephanie's appearing virtually. There she is, Stephanie. I'm just not clear on where in the. Oh, okay, all right. It's more materials from the pre-budget workshop. So Stephanie's going to take us through a presentation here on the transportation, the GTR. So Stephanie, welcome, and you have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Warden. I'm just going to share my screen. One moment, please. Good morning, Council. As directed, Council requested staff to provide further analysis, eliminating the Grey County portion of the GTR service and leaving the Southgate portion in. So I've done the analysis as requested, and I'm going to take you through that momentarily. So separating out the Southgate and the Grey County services, what does this mean? So currently Highway 10 route has the biggest ridership of all of our routes. The ridership between Owen Sound and Dundalk is about 25 people daily and comes at a net levy impact of 121,850. These riders would no longer have access to service if we removed the Grey County portion. Separation of the two services would require renegotiating the contract with Driver Seat Owen Sound, as the current pricing is based on certain efficiencies and economics of scale that could no longer be captured. From a client service and long-term economic development perspective, consideration should be given to reducing costs by enhancing the Highway 10 service and eliminating other underperforming routes. The volume of riders using the service to travel solely between Shelburne and Orangeville along Highway 10, Dufferin County residents, can exceed our current bus capacity. At times in the morning and afternoon rush, Dundalk and other Grey County residents are left behind in Dundalk or Orangeville as no seats are available. Dufferin and Shelburne don't contribute financially to the weekday service their residents greatly benefit from. However, it should be noted that the town of Shelburne was providing weekend service within Shelburne and to Orangeville that Grey residents benefited from. However, they are discontinuing this service due to low ridership and a high cost per rider. So some ways that we could modify Highway 10, we could free up needed capacity on the southern portion of Highway 10 route by removing GTR stops in Shelburne. This would avoid the need for Grey County and other Southgate investment. However, this isn't necessarily ideal, as some Dundalk residents and many people staying at the Skyview Motel like to get off in Shelburne. We could approach the town of Shelburne and Dufferin County to look for financial support to continue offering the very popular service between Dundalk, Shelburne, and Orangeville. And we could fund an increase in the service between Owen Sound and Orangeville by reducing service between Owen Sound and Blue Mountains, perhaps. And this could be cost neutral. Some additional savings that could be considered. We could reduce service between Owen Sound and Wyerton from September to May. So during the down season, we could operate a smaller vehicle in the winter months. And then we would just increase the service again in the summer when the very popular service to Sauble Beach would be needed. If we reduce service, there could be a net levy savings of $20,000. We could eliminate the service between Meaford and Blue Mountains. So removing this daily service, it does operate 7 days a week and offers 4 trips a day, would provide a net savings of $121,850. And lastly, the biggest would be to terminate the whole thing. Our 2024 levy impact is $438,300. And if we were to eliminate that whole amount, what I could do is focus on the economic development approach, develop a project to support businesses and entrepreneurs by reducing barriers to entry into the taxi and ride sharing industry, and work with our existing businesses to build on that network. This last slide here just breaks down what that current net levy projection is for 2024 and what that translates into a cost per rider. As you see, it varies depending on the route. I will stop sharing. And I'm happy to take any questions that council has.
Thank you, Stephanie. Does Councillor Mattress?
Thank you. Through you, the chair. In preparation of today's meeting, I did revisit the model, the shared partnership between Uber and the town of Innisfil, to see what was new, what was working, and they have in fact just in the last few weeks updated and expanded their program due to the success of it. They of course do have an investment into it. There is a budget investment. So my question would be, having not sat at this table in the previous term or previous terms, I'll ask then what kind of exploration had been done in terms of that kind of model, now that we've got some hard data coming from Innisfil, which has a number of similarities. I am assuming that suggestion to explore other options is what was being inferred there, but what prior consideration have been done prior to this term? Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Stephanie, do you want to speak to that? Please, go ahead.
Thank you, your worship, through you. So to answer your questions, we have explored and spoken with Uber multiple times. Kim and I have had a few meetings with them recently to discuss what the landscape could look like. We've also met with other ride sharing companies, as yes, Uber is the big name, but ultimately I would not like to put Grey County in a box. And what I mean by that last option is more so exploring what are the current barriers in our existing economy for our local businesses that want to enter into the market, because I do know there are a number of individuals in the city of Owen Sound that would like to open ride sharing businesses. And I have been working with the Chamber of Commerce in Owen Sound and the Owen Sound Police Board to explore how to make this possible. And as I said, we have been working with Uber. So Uber, over the last few years, since the pandemic, they've actually been able to create like an algorithm or a breakdown of which communities will be successful and which communities wouldn't be successful with an Uber model. So those conversations are ongoing with Uber and myself and Kim. So the commitment to stick with one company is not at all what I would suggest. It's just simply, how do we open up the channels so that people can be successful in our community? The challenge with partnering with, I guess, one specific ride sharing company or going with ride sharing in general could be, I cannot guarantee that it will take off, because it is solely about the business providers and what their economies of scale are, and if they think that it is an affordable means of making a living. So we have done the legwork. We've worked with the province and we've worked with the major ride sharing companies out there. So plenty of opportunities to continue to explore and work on.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any other questions? Counselor, oh, go ahead, Kim. And then I'll go to Counselor Deckard.
Just one other quick point on that was, our program is funded through the Community Transportation Grant Program. That was really the genesis of all of that. And they had some very specific requirements that we needed to meet. So that was also part of how we came to be in the situation that we are. Thanks.
Any other questions for Stephanie? Or Counselor Deckard, sorry. And then Counselor Gray. Go ahead, Warren.
Thank you, Warden Milne. Stephanie, I believe Wellington County uses a program called RideWell, and I'm just like, is it based on an Uber model, or are they doing something totally on their own? And how would that, how would you see that playing out in our area?
Through you, your worship. Thank you for the question, Councillor Deckard. Yes, I have explored what Wellington County is doing. It's similar in concept to what Uber does, but the main difference with Wellington County is they pay their drivers a set wage for the fact that they wanted to guarantee that this was a good employment, because they can't necessarily guarantee how many rides were going to be booked. So all of their drivers are paid a set wage to make it an attractive employment. And also Wellington County does provide the vehicles. They received grant funding similar to Grey County, and they chose to operate this RideWell model using their funding from the province. So it is something we could explore, but again, that would doing what RideWell is doing would require an investment from Grey County.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Counselor Greg.
Thank you, Warden. My question here is, there is the base level of funding that's provided from the province, and I support that. I'm not supportive of the levy costs to the individuals in Grey County. We're looking at a net levy cost from Owen Sound to Blue Mountains of literally $100 in 2025. We have the GO service from Guelph to Owen Sound. We can put someone on that bus to come up at 5:30 on a Friday afternoon, comes into Owen Sound at 10 to 8, it's $30. That's the cost. That's the real cost the person pays. So I have a concern with what we charge riders that leads to that drastic cost per rider. And also, it's not really reflected or noted in the report here, Stephanie, on what is the base level of service that we should be providing as per the contract, and then everything that's beyond that that's dressed up. Thanks.
Stephanie.
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Greg. The reason you don't see, you are correct, the base level isn't there. I can very quickly summarize the difference between the base level and what we're doing. The base level provided from the province on Highway 10 and 26 required us to operate 5 days a week. So now we're above and beyond that. The requirement to go between Owen Sound and Wiarton from the province was only 3 days a week. So if we were to go back to just what the province provides us, my concern is it's really not going to be helpful. With the minimum that the province provided, yes, it's great, but it would mean that the whole system needs to be readjusted, and perhaps it is more of like a Greyhound bus in sense where it just takes people that long distance once or twice a day. But I would not be able to achieve the level of service or the type of service that we're doing if we went back down to the bare minimum of what the grant offers.
Thank you, Stephanie. Council Kim.
Stephanie, too, I believe it's under the terms of our grant that the fare that we charge the riders is that $5 a ride. I don't believe that we have any flexibility on that. In addition to the days of service, is it not the number of runs as well, Stephanie, or right? Yeah.
Yes, that is correct, Kim. So the fares were set by the province as a part of our grant application. That's the reason why the GO system has a different fare structure based on grant application. we could always explore changing our fare model to be more cost recovery or increase our cost recovery, sorry. But again, my fear would be that you will lose people as it will become unaffordable. So that is one thing. And yes, also there are a number of times a day where we've added a few extra runs throughout the week just to improve the service as well. So it would be quite significantly different if we reduced our service back down to the grant level.
Thank you, Stephanie. Councillor DeBreen.
Thank you, Warden. And through you, I would imagine, I've never taken an Uber. I would imagine that an Uber from Dundalk to Orangeville would cost more than $5. Having said that, if Dufferin or Shelburne didn't come back to the table as far as helping to fund the run from Shelburne to Orangeville, would there be an opportunity to continue to Orangeville? People could still stop in Shelburne if they originated in Owen Sound or Dundalk, but they would not be able to board in Shelburne to go to Orangeville unless they'd already originated. And then I'm not sure how that all works. Because, you know, if Shelburne isn't prepared to help at the table financially to bring their residents to Orangeville, then we shouldn't be paying for it. Thank you.
Stephanie, do you want to speak to that, please?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the question, Councillor. Yes, those are conversations that I need to have with my colleagues in Shelburne and in Dufferin County. They do see the value of the system. They have been beyond grateful and very clear that they how they have come about receiving this opportunity within their community. So the town of Shelburne staff are very appreciative of everything that has happened. And they themselves were including the weekend service over the past few years, which we benefited from as well. As I said, unfortunately, we're at a different point now where we are having capacity issues and our riders aren't able to always get on the bus. And this is a relatively new problem that has occurred. A great problem, but it is a problem. So these conversations do need to happen. I just need the direction from council if this is something you would like me to explore. And once I have that, I'm happy to have those conversations with my colleagues.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Any other questions? Okay. Not seeing any for now. This will be this presentation is part of the pre-budget workshop presentation overall. So we'll come back to this after we come out of closed session. We have another presentation. Savannah is going to, do you want to do it after lunch? Lunch is here. Lunch is here. That's always a popular time. Let's break for lunch and we'll reconvene at, shall we say 1:15? Or try to reconvene at 1:15. So we stand in recess. 1 minute warning. Okay, Rob, if you wouldn't mind starting that machine up, please. Thank you, sir. We'll bring the meeting back to order. We have a presentation from our director of everything. Well, not everything, but a lot of things. Savannah is going to give us a presentation on economic development and tourism. So Savannah, welcome, and you have the floor.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Oh, and thank you, Sarah, putting that slide up. Just a couple of slides to go through with you. And I know we were just here talking about the Economic Development Tourism Culture Master Plan, but given these conversations, we thought it would be good to come back and talk about what the department does. And while we like to toot our horn and think that we're very unique at the county, we're not. Economic development is typically a department at all upper tier government levels. So some have tourism and culture combined, others have them as three separate organizations. But in 2019, we became one department by merging those three individual groups. So overall, and this first part is right out of the master plan slides that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, what the Economic Development Tourism Culture Department really works to do is create that enabling environment for people and business to invest. At the same time, we're creating a sense of pride and belonging in our communities. So while they're not tangible things that you can see, they impact locally by bringing businesses into your communities, by bringing residents into your communities and keeping them here. Having EDTC positioned at the upper tier also provides a regional lens. So it allows us to see priorities for investment so that we're getting the best return we can possibly get countywide. And county staff play a countywide coordination role because of that and because of where we sit that no one else is in a position to be able to do. So the county also has the scope to successfully secure provincial and federal grants that benefit the entire region. One of them I'm thinking of is Sydenham campus specifically. I was provincially funded to start, federally funded right now as a big portion of it to be able to bring services that we would not ever get here if we weren't in that county collaborative position. So thinking of the regional lens and the benefits, municipalities and community partners are localized. So you are focused on the ground and you're taking that direction and that insight from the ground up. Where at the county, we're constantly scanning the entire environment regionally. We're listening, we're facilitating connections so that we can find innovative and meaningful solutions. And it really is a beautiful spot in the middle. That's where all of the innovative solutions are coming from. So while we share that same geography, we offer a very different view, but it's bringing those together that has all the value. And what we found, we have known this to be true for a long time, but the master plan work really cemented that our municipal staff and our community partners really are looking to the county to play a coordinating role, to provide the tools and the resources to develop broad scope policies and broadly market, because we have the resources and locally you don't have those same resources. So economic development in particular, this is an essential part of promoting economic well-being in our community, in our region, locally and abroad. Specifically around job creation, and I know we have also talked about it in the past, we don't create jobs. Unless we're hiring ourselves, we are not responsible for creating jobs, but we certainly set the environment to enable our businesses to create jobs and to upskill employees and to get them into well-paying, well-positioned jobs across the county. And part of that comes through the skill development work that we do with Georgian College and others. So we know that that's not something we own, but we can absolutely facilitate it, and we have been. And there's a couple examples there about the PSW program, which we did in partnership with Jen and long-term care in all the homes across Grey and Bruce and the YMCA. And that was 100% employment rate coming out of there, 132 staff. That doesn't just happen. And looking at the skilled trades as well, and the development that's happened at Georgian College, bringing 7 new apprenticeship programs and growing their annual apprentices from 100 to 600 graduating through Georgian. Those are significant changes that have happened because of the work that we do. Looking at facilitating business investment and growing the assessment base. Again, when we're trying to provide that environment for businesses to invest, that investment is growing your assessment base. So even though we can't tangibly tell you exactly what that is, you're seeing it on the roll every year as new investment and new business comes in. And in the last 5 years, as we showed you in the slides a couple of weeks ago, we've added over 2,000 new businesses in Grey County in the last 5 years, including a pandemic, which is amazing. Thinking of foreign direct investment work, community improvement plan, we'll talk a little bit about that, because that really is a policy and a program that happened because of the regional and municipal partnership, where we got together and we figured out what those pain points were, what we could do collectively and jointly to bring those resources. And we've had a $24 million investment come through that program in the last 2 years. So those are big numbers. The relationship building, we are here, there, and everywhere. We have boots on the ground to be understanding what's happening in the community, to be able to bring all of those stories and all of those feelings and all of those, concerns and opportunities back and put them into one spot so that we can then work with our municipalities and our partners to create that change. Extending the reach of businesses to grow their markets, looking at those foreign direct investment opportunities or export opportunities, or supporting businesses like McLean's, who've just had their largest contract ever come through this year due to export down south, which is phenomenal. We provide a single point of contact for provincial and federal opportunities. So we are well connected to Investment Ontario and Invest Canada offices. We are well connected because of the foreign missions that we've done to date with exports and the local reps around North America. And now, as of this year, we'll be into Europe as well. So those calls are constant. And we're also a regional liaison with the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus and with the 4 counties. So we work very closely with all 4 local counties, but we also work with the rest of our counties through Western Ontario Wardens Caucus organizations. Business retention, providing direct supports to business. This is something we have always done, business retention and expansion. It is something that locally you're doing as well, but the volume and the need is significant. So all through the pandemic, we had a 1-800 business line that you could call and you could get a staff and you could talk, and they dealt with a lot. There was a lot of just a need for an ear of somebody who would listen, and that's a role that we play. So before things could escalate and before something could turn into a crisis, we were talking to them and we were making connections. And that's why you saw the business support that you do through the pandemic, and that continues. It's a really important piece of the role of economic development, tourism, and culture, is being there to be able to talk to our business community. We host networking and regional events, which provide access to labor. So things like the job fair, where we have 1,000 people coming through the doors annually and 100 businesses who are showing up to look to access that labor. Young Professionals Network, because it's really hard to make connections when you're young and new to the area. I met somebody at the Southgate Business Breakfast yesterday morning who was brand new and said, how do I meet people? I don't know anybody here. This is a great event, but what else is there? So I showed her the Young Professionals Network, and she got really excited about that because it's another way to be able to engage and feel a part of the community. Innovation and entrepreneurship. So we assumed the Business Enterprise Center from the City of Owen Sound in 2018. Having it moved to the county, we've been able to grow it. So it's providing those services to all of your municipalities. It always did, but it wasn't understood in that same way. And we've seen that growth, which is why we've had over 2,500 inquiries in the last 5 years. And that is a direct impact to the businesses that you are seeing grow around the region. And we also identified a huge gap in scaling services. So you would have to go to the GTA, or you would have to go at least 2 hours away to get scale up services for businesses who had started but wanted to hire somebody new, or wanted to expand their business, or wanted to get into exporting. That didn't exist. So we created Catapult Grey Bruce through federal funding at Sydenham campus with an advisory board that turned into a board of directors. And there's some really cool transitionary work happening there that we'll be bringing back in November, I guess, end of this month, because this is November now. Longer time's going. And then looking at things like the Intelligent Communities Forum and building that awareness and pride of all of the things that Grey County has so much to be proud of, bringing it into one spot and then putting it on the world stage where others can see. And that is one of the pieces of economic development, marketing, and communications, is showing the world that we're here and what we do, and we have opportunities and the ability to make a difference, and we want them to come here and be part of that. So all of those pieces go in, and the Made in Grey magazine, which we didn't do last year, but we are happily bringing back, because it is such a vital piece of communications to be able to put everything together, look at Grey County, our municipalities, our partners, and celebrate what we have here. Looking at tourism and culture, also an essential part of promoting economic well-being. People attraction and retention are also a huge piece of this, because most new residents are tourists to start. That is how they come to Grey County. They fall in love and they don't want to drive home anymore, so they stay. So that's absolutely assessment growth there as well, and part of the housing need that we have. And tourism is also where the life happens. So when you leave work and you go out for dinner, or you go to a movie, or you go to a shop, or you go to an experience or festival, that is tourism that has a direct impact on the residents that we have. So that is business and people retention, number one. It's also a significant sector. Over a quarter of our workforce works in tourism and is directly impacted by tourism. And almost half of all of our businesses are part of tourism. So it is huge. We're also facilitating countywide approach to destination development. So we have the OMG group, which is the outdoor management group, and that brings together all of our municipalities, our conservation authorities, our outdoor groups, our volunteer groups, the Bruce Trails, and the Collipore, Friends of Collipore, and those types of groups around one table to talk about the issues that we are facing by not having the infrastructure in place to handle the people who are coming. It plays a really pivotal role, and we do that in partnership with planning, because both have a piece to play in being able to look at what does destination management look like, knowing again that outside of our forests, it's not us. We can't manage the properties of others, but we can certainly bring them together to have conversations about what we're all dealing with and try and find those solutions. As far as tourism goes as well, we only have 1 of 9 municipalities who has a tourism role, but yet it's happening to every single one of you. You are all dealing with tourism, and that is why the county plays a lead role in that, and you look to us to play that lead role. On the marketing communication side of tourism, we're looking at controlling the message wherever possible. We know that there are a whole lot of content creators out there and they have a lot of control over messaging, but there is messaging that we can put out that we cannot show to try and make a difference in what people are doing when they actually come here to respect. Can we pick who's going to come or where they're going to go or how they're going to experience or explore? No. But we absolutely can make sure that we're putting out a consistent message with all of the partners around the table, so that we are starting to set that expectation. And then looking at smaller promotion or unique opportunities, things that people just don't know about. So that's another role that the county is playing. We're putting together those itineraries and putting together those documents to show people this is what it looks like to come and spend your money in Grey County. We don't have anybody else who is doing that at the same level. Looking at coordination of infrastructure and investment attraction, we already talked a little bit about that, and we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like in greater detail when we continue the conversation. But quality of life, access to employment, education and cultural activities and things to do, this touches our entire department. So Grey Roots, I don't have a slide on here about Grey Roots because I know that you know the value that it brings to the community. It is a place where people find out about the county. They build that sense of connection so they understand where they have come, what stories there are to make them feel a sense of belonging and pride in being here, and then wanting to be able to stay, getting to enjoy with their neighbors and other friends and family, the events and the programs that are put on. So all of those pieces really come together to provide that place to reflect and to celebrate and connect. And it really is a key tourism driver that we are so fortunate to have right here in our own department. So that is this portion of the presentation. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Savannah. Excellent report. Any questions? Counselor Gray.
Quick question. Why was Made in Gray discontinued? And then what is the driving considerations for bringing it back next year?
Excellent question through you, Mr. Warden. At the beginning, everybody was involved in its creation. So all of our municipalities were writing articles, all of our community partners were writing articles, we were writing articles, we were getting photography, putting it all together. And it was a beautiful magazine that we promoted everywhere. And we did it 4 times a year. Then we moved it back to twice a year because not everybody was writing articles anymore and not everyone was taking pictures because they just didn't have the time or the capacity to be able to do that. Then it moved to once a year and Rob and his team wrote the entire thing. Which they did a phenomenal job of. And it was probably one of, would you say that is one that was mailed to all the homes during COVID, and it was a pure celebration of business. So it was all about business success stories. And it was so well received. And we had so many calls from businesses saying, I have new people coming in. They had no idea I was here, but we mailed it to every single home in Grey County. Got very expensive and we no longer had the time to be able to write it. So as part of our master plan and understanding that that was a key piece and we have lost something with that, we want to be able to bring it back, but including it as part of the priority of our own staff time this time, as well as looking at external writers and content developers that we can lean on. So we're not leaning on the municipalities to be able to develop that, because locally you just don't have the resources to be able to participate in all of these things, yet they're super valued and your staff want them and they want to find a way to be able to get back to that. So that's the drive to bring it back.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, Savannah. And thanks for the plug in the copy with the mayor yesterday morning and the deputy mayor. We had some other counselors as well. It's a good event. And Savannah was part of the panel and she did a marvelous job. Thank you. Okay, so now I'll come back to the motion to come in camera, go into camera. Councillor Nielsen, and I forget who the seconder was for that, but I'll take Councillor DeBreen. All in favor? That is carried. I probably should read the motion. That the committee of the whole does now go into closed session pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended to discuss 1, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and 2, labor relations or employee negotiations. So I'm not sure which staff need to stay. They can all stay. There you go. Well, that makes it easy. We all stay.